Hi, good evening, and welcome to Talking About. Tonight's topic is dwarfism, and a little bit later on, we're going to be taking your calls. We are a viewer interactive program. We'll have a phone number up on the screen in a little while. Again, tonight's topic is dwarfism. My guests are, let's go in order, Betty Adelson, Anna Adelson, and Julie Williams. Okay, well, it's good to have you here. I'm glad you can all make it tonight. Let's start at the beginning. What is dwarfism? Beyond the obvious, I mean,
It's I think it's listed as anybody who is under 4'10", and has a condition. Is that what it is, Mom?
Anyone with a medical condition who's 4'10" or under, officially, as a result of some kind of medical problem.
So your grandma who is 4'10", but she just happens to be 4'10", is not considered a dwarf.
okay, so it is something
You have to be medically
diagnosed. Okay.
Yeah.
Are there different kinds? Are there different variations? Or is it just one group?
There's over 200 different types of dwarfism, and I have achondroplasia.
Okay.
And Julie is a different type of dwarfism.
Which is?
My form is called dystrophic dysplasia. That's the kind I have.
Okay, and
The most common forms are achondroplasia is the most common. I think it's 1 in every, is it 10,000 births, or is that wrong, Mom? 14,000, I don't know.
They keep changing it. It was anywhere between 14 and 20,000, 1 in 20,000, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And then there's SED, which I don't know what it means. So I'm going to go to my mother again, what it stands for.
It's
Spondyloepiphyseal dysplasia.
right,
How's that?
spondyloepiphyseal dysplasia.
these are
all of these-
$10 words.
Yeah.
What you're looking at is the whole group that's called chondrodystrophies, which are bone disorders. The whole bunch of them, they have million-dollar names. They tend to have very long, unpronounceable names, but they attach to individual people, but they have complicated names.
So, okay. So the term dwarfism, is that the most politically correct, or is that just an accuracy issue? And what is offensive? I mean, is the term midget considered offensive?
Right, yeah. The term midget, I've never met a dwarf that would enjoy being called a midget. Dwarf, or a little person, is a short stature, a person of short stature, is usually, but everyone has their own opinion. I prefer to be not to be referred to as a person who has dwarfism, whereas someone else would choose little person, so
It varies
varying.
from.
But midget, whoop,
Okay.
yeah.
Is it just because of the way it's been used?
Yeah,
or-
I think so, yeah, when it's seen,
Well-
I don't know why it's become such a negative word, but
It's, I guess, just is the word or what's behind the word sometimes.
it just seems has a derogatory connotation to it, and I don't know why, because it used to be a medical term for a person of proportionate dwarfism,
Maybe.
but I don't know why it's become negative. It's just something
it's
that's
so
happened
broad,
over
or-
time. Like children in the street will call you midget because they don't know, but
Because, I
Like,
mean,
look at the midget, look at the
Yeah,
midget
but-
is a common thing.
But why is
Yeah.
but why, if they were saying look at the dwarf all over, would we have a negative feeling about dwarf? I don't know. I don't know why, but it is.
Okay, because I have to, a little tiny confession. I usually have a regular opening sequence of clips from previous shows. And at one point I had a couple of stand-up comedians on, and we were talking about what is funny and what is not funny. And the line that they used was, incest, not funny, midgets, not funny, incestuous midgets, funny. And 10 minutes ago we had a little panic attack in the control room saying, that's not really appropriate tonight. And is that appropriate at any time? Should I remove that from the opening?
Incestuous
Two
midgets.
comedians talking about what is funny.
Mm-hmm.
Incest, not funny. Midgets, not funny. Incestuous midgets, funny.
I would say, yeah, that's not nice.
Yeah, because it's something that you take for granted.
Yeah, I would say a dwarf
mean,
could do
yeah.
that. Could do that joke.
Could do that joke.
Yeah, I can do a midget joke as long as I want the cows to come home. But no, I wouldn't think so. What do you think?
I think anytime that you're questioning, is that okay?
Right.
Then you
Because-
probably do want to say maybe this isn't the right, maybe it's not
Right.
okay.
Yeah, honestly, until 10 minutes ago, I didn't even remember that I had it in there.
Yeah.
And it's just something that you take for granted.
Was it on just before the opening of the show? Was it
No,
on?
I
Oh, you took
like,
it
I
out
had
of
a
the-
panic
oh.
attack 10 minutes ago, and I said, we can't use that. Let's just run it over black and not do that because
And it has to do also with who you know, whether it is close to you. So someone I know said to a friend of ours, would you like to hear a midget joke? And he said, no. Would you like to hear a dwarf joke? No, because it's not a joke anymore if it's someone who you know that you don't like to hear jokes about. And the midget thing is, I think, midge means little insect, and that's a negative kind of thing.
Is that the origin of the word?
That's the origin of the word. But I think
MIDG.
MIDGE,
is little
and
insect.
it got to be bad though, just round like a black, like Negro was once okay, colored people are okay, then black is okay, and then people of color okay. So these days, midget is really thought of as terrible, and maybe it's because people say, look at the midget, a lot on the streets. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I don't know. But it's,
I also think, too, it's not always what someone says or what word they use when they say it. There's a sense of the intent behind what someone is
Right.
saying. If there is a feeling of malicious intent or an intrusive intent, someone coming up and making comments, assuming some things, and intruding, then you can say the nicest thing in the world and I'm annoyed or offended. So the intent and the maliciousness behind it has always been my
Hello?
Your gauge for it.
yeah.
Hello?
So, and I believe we have a caller.
This is Harry.
Okay, hi Harry. Do you have a question?
Yes, my question is, considering the circumstances, is it very difficult for them to get dates, or how are they looked at when they try to date among one another?
Okay, relationships. He's talking about dating. Do you generally? What are you asking? Are you asking if they date with?
Can he
Is
repeat?
this off color or is this?
I think it's real, but can he ask?
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Are you talking to me?
Yes. Can you elaborate on?
Yeah.
on
What
you-
I'm trying to say, do they date taller people, or they tend to date people their own size?
within the dwarf community?
Is he asking preference? Tall, short?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do we?
Okay, anything goes.
Yeah.
That will also vary from person to person that you ask, so I don't,
Right. It depends on the person,
right.
I happen to have only dated people of short stature, but there are many dwarfs that, I am absolutely, it doesn't matter, but I just, who knows? I have no preference.
Okay, so it's a matter of
Average
personal
stature or
preference.
short stature, yeah. I have no preference. Some people do, some people don't.
So there's nothing that really dominates.
Yes, I don't know if I have enough information. How can you make that? You would have to know every dwarf.
Yeah, well, you're expected to come on this show. Okay, you have any other questions, Harry? I guess not.
No.
Thank you for calling, Harry. And we are taking phone calls tonight. Our number is 718-460-9802. We welcome your calls and questions. Just keep it clean and don't be mean. Okay. Okay. Now we talked a little bit about the genetics of dwarfism. Is it? It's a genetic thing, or is it just something.
You
It
want
is,
to do that?
It is genetic.
And within each dwarfism, there will be specific genetic, kind of like a blueprint that will
Okay.
make that particular dwarfism manifest itself.
Okay.
Mine is a recessive genetic. So two recessive genes have to come together. So both parents have to have at least one of those
One of
recessive
those
genes.
recessive.
Do you want to say about yours?
What's that? What?
Nothing.
Oh.
You would say it if you wanted to say it.
Okay.
And I think I'm the same, right? Recessive?
I
I have no idea.
I don't know.
Mom?
No, achondroplasia is dominant.
Okay.
There you go.
So that means in most, achondroplasia is the most common condition, and about 80%, 85% of persons born with achondroplasia come from parents who are average statured, and it's a new mutation.
Okay.
That means it's the first time it's ever happened in their family,
Okay.
and then once it's happened, it gets passed on in a certain way. So
Okay.
that
Are there percentages of, for example, the odds of, say, mixed parents having a child of short stature? What are the percentages or ratios, or are there percentages or ratios?
you have
I
that?
only, I thought that for two dwarfs, I thought it was 50% dwarf, 25% average, and then 25% double dominant, right? Is that
Right.
correct?
Right.
In which
Double
case,
dominant.
double dominant is which each person gets the dwarf gene. Each person gives the dwarf gene to the child, and in which case it's not a viable, it's not a viable, child.
Okay.
And either
It'd be the
it-
pregnancy
it
would
li-
terminate
it-
itself,
it
or
would either terminate itself, or when the child was born, unfortunately, the child would only live
a short time.
very short time.
So,
So that's something I think that people don't know, that so many dwarfs go through who have children, is that 1 in 4 of the births,
will
ends in
not make it.
Yeah, will not make it. But now,
Yeah,
with,
that's just if there are two, both are dwarfs.
right, that's what I
Right.
said. 2 dwarfs have a child together.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but the genes have been discovered.
Yeah.
Is there screening available? And
Yes.
I don't
would
know.
it-
You
I
wanna-
mean,
There
you wanna
really no
take
more
that
than
one?
medical
prenatal
stuff.
screening.
There is. It is available, yes.
Okay.
You can have a screening for dwarfism. And for mine, I know you can. It can be found. Amnio. I can't even think of the word, what it's called.
Amniocentesis.
Yeah, can be found if someone is concerned about that. In my particular kind of dwarfism, someone would pursue that perhaps if they had a history in their family of my form of dwarfism. So they would ask for that. Perhaps. Not everybody does, but some will choose to look for that.
Okay. And should people look for that?
It's a delicate issue. I mean, as far as the discovery of genes, it starts with, in 1984, the gene for achondroplasia, I'm sorry, 1994, the gene for achondroplasia was discovered. And since then, diastrophic, pseudochondroplasia, many other genes have been discovered, and they keep doing that. But for dwarfs themselves, if you speak to dwarfs, many dwarfs are very happy to have a child like themselves, and they would not dream of having amniocentesis in order not to have another child like themselves. And the test is very rarely done, these tests.
Is it expensive? Do you know?
It's very expensive to do it. Most people don't test for it. And there's been, I think in Australia, there was a big case of aborting a dwarf child,
Okay.
which most of us would not like to see happen, because if these children were aborted, we wouldn't have people like some
Right.
of the great people who we know who are dwarfs, short-statured, like
Me.
like Anna and like
Julie.
Julie and Steinmetz, who was very important in electricity and inventing and so on. Many great people would not be here if we did this eugenic thing and eliminated them through amniocentesis.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
It can have a good thing too, and again, everyone will have a personal, philosophical, what's the right thing to do. If it's, some will use it in a hygienic fashion. Others may use it as information. I want to prepare. I want to get information. I want to have my preparation for what I'm going to need to be providing medically, maybe even financially, even maybe environmentally. Maybe the cribs or the baby room needs to be arranged differently. Maybe, maybe not. So it's not all bad,
Right.
and that will also vary. People's perceptions on that will vary from person to person and how they feel about
Right.
that.
Okay. And well, talking about preparations, I mean, are there any medical concerns that are more common that you might face?
It depends what type of dwarfism
Okay.
you have. And in each type of dwarfism, obviously, as in each person, some people have back problems, some people don't. So in each type of dwarfism, it's different. I can talk about what I've had. I had the innate chondroplasia. Well, this is even a lot of achondroplasia and dwarfs, other dwarfism might have it, is leg surgery when they're young. And that's just preventative and to prevent bowed legs.
Okay.
And other than that, I've had some back problems, but not hardly at all. I haven't had any ear problems, which is common in achondroplasia, and spine problems. Those are the two most common, I think.
So,
And have your mother?
With dystrophic dysplasia, there can be some birth issues that occur right at birth, potentially, depending on how severe the condition is. There can be some trachea issues, some small trachs, breathing difficulties that need to be attended to urgently at birth. That doesn't happen with every dystrophic, but it can. I think all different dwarfism conditions will have different kinds and levels of skeletal dysplasias and will need different degrees of surgical interventions. Earlier, later, it will vary depending on the kind of condition. The bones are displaced, so that wear and tear can become a problem earlier or as we age, depending on the kind of dwarfism. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Arthritis and skeletal problems are probably the biggest medical condition related to dwarfism that you hear the most about.
Okay. And in addition to the surgeries that you've had, what are there other common surgeries that are done? Because I'm in some reading, preparing for the show, I've saw some information about hormone therapy and bone lengthening. Is that an issue of self-esteem, or is that a medical issue?
With the leg lengthening, it's not, unless it's for straightening. They can, for straightening of the bones. But leg lengthening is strictly, I believe, cosmetic, or not, you wouldn't say cosmetic, but personal choice. It's not medically necessary at all.
Okay, so it's almost
Or
a form
medically beneficial. It's not medically beneficial.
it is. Can it be medically harmful?
Yes, it can be. If it's not done properly, if you have a doctor that doesn't know what they're doing, sometimes it's 4 years of excruciating pain. And sometimes the doctor doesn't do it right and the bones break again. And
I mean, in general, how difficult is it to find a doctor who knows their stuff?
Very difficult. It's difficult to find orthopedic surgeons, neurosurgeons, if you need that, who have a track record with dwarfism, particularly if you want someone that specializes in your particular form. It's hard to find. At least that's been my experience.
Well, I think we both were lucky,
Very
lucky that we grew up with a man named Dr. Stephen Kopitz, who actually just died a month ago or 2 months ago.
June, yeah.
And he was an orthopedist. He only did dwarfs. That was his whole practice, and he was he was just brilliant, and he made the life of thousands and thousands of dwarfs more livable because of his innovations and his expertise. And There are a few doctors now that solely do dwarfs, right? But not many.
Right, I think, who at least have a considerable practice of dwarfs. I think there are around 7 centers in the country that you can really count on great expertise, but not so very many, and some people who have a little experience. And
So-
those persons sometimes can call the doctors who are the most experienced
But it is
to learn
very
more.
important that if you have dwarfism, that you should see someone who has seen many other dwarfs.
Right. Is it becoming a specialty of more
haven't-
doctors?
I have no idea. Probably not, because it's not
Yeah.
probably not lucrative, right? Because you're only a percentage of the population, you know.
Mm.
And most pediatricians have only seen one dwarf, and most hospitals have seen very few. So it's only in a few special places, Texas, Los Angeles, Delaware, Baltimore still has a very considerable practice in dwarfs. But you asked, one thing you asked about, you mentioned hormone therapy, and we
Yes.
haven't mentioned that. Mostly we're talking here about the skeletal dysplasias, which are bone
Okay.
disorders. But
Is that a common misconception?
no, but endocrine disorders, which require hormone therapy. Many people have heard about growth hormone,
Yes.
and that was first used back a couple of decades ago and continues to be done. And that's very beneficial in many ways when it's done with very young children and infants. The younger, the more effective in causing them not just to grow to 5 feet or more, but to be healthier. And that is
What is
beneficial
that? What
and common. And that's endocrine disorders, what used to be called, quote, midget or proportionate dwarfs, or the term is hypopituitary dwarfs.
Okay.
But there are fewer in this country now because many have had, it's diagnosed, and many have growth hormone at a young age and by injection. But most people you see at Little People of America meetings have bone disorders.
Okay.
Or some people have things like they get tuberculosis, like Alexander Pope had Pott's disease. He got tuberculosis, and he was only 4'6". So some people get it because of other medical problems
Okay.
as they go along.
Okay. And we are taking your calls tonight. Our topic is dwarfism, and our phone number is area code 718-460-9802, and we want to hear from you, so please give us a call. Okay, is dwarfism considered a disability? And
and the ADA, it is the American Disabilities Act. It's listed as one of the types as a disability. So you can get, some dwarfs are eligible for Social Security benefits and disability benefits, parking things and stuff. Some dwarfs use it, take advantage of it. Some dwarfs don't. There's a varying degree of disability in the dwarf community.
Okay, and as far as disability, is there a high ratio of persons with limited abilities?
What do you mean in terms of?
For example, say athleticism, or even day-to-day activities that might be more difficult in some cases. Is it very common to have a hard time, or in most cases, most things doable?
No, I would say it's different. It's different for any, depending upon what ailments you have. I have a hard time walking 10 blocks, but many other things I can do. I don't know if I consider, sometimes I have pain and sometimes I don't. But as I said, I'm one of the lucky ones, you know? Like, there are people who can't walk 1 block or do something, or
Okay.
I can reach a phone booth, whereas you might not be able, you know, you can't.
It is amazing what an inch will do for you. How 1 inch can be a critical difference for many different things. You asked if there were things that were difficult and if dwarfism is a disability. Oftentimes, I feel more disabled by the environment than I do by the dwarfism itself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Our environment is designed for people that are in between a certain height.
Right.
They're not taller than such and such, and they're not shorter than such and such. So toilets are made a certain height.
The average kitchen counter.
Yeah. So depending on the environment, it becomes more of a disability to me. And depending on when I go to a new town, new city, then it's a bigger issue. I'm not familiar. The environments are not set up necessarily. So environment plays a big part into that in my mind in terms of whether it is a disability or not.
Okay. So, for example, just looking for an apartment.
Oh yeah, sure.
Could either involve looking for something that's already specially designed, or having to completely renovate, or am I losing it? Actually, we do have a caller, so let's deal with the caller, and then maybe we can find a track again. We have Joanne from Queens. Joanne, you are on the line. When you're ready, just say hello. Joanne? And I think we might have lost Joanne. Well, Joanne, give us a call back. Your call is welcome. Everybody's call is welcome. 718-460-9802.
You mentioned apartments, looking for places to
yes.
live and renovating things. I just moved here to the Manhattan area, and it was amazing finding apartments. It's very difficult to find apartments that met certain basic requirements: easy in, easy out, no steps. Depending on where you live, that's easier to find, or it's more difficult to find. To renovate your house to meet a height, you have got to have some money.
Yeah.
So money also becomes the equalizer in terms of how impairing or how disabling sometimes your life may be, because it's quite expensive to renovate a house, to truly renovate it and make it easy access in the kitchen, bathrooms, all the way around. And there have been some that have done that. I've been to some that are very nice.
Yeah, it works out if you have money.
Yeah.
All right, well, talking about money, do you find a lot of blatant employment discrimination takes place?
You'd have to. Me, I haven't found that. No.
Have you
In
people
my
you've talked to? Is it
people
common?
I think I've. It's lucky to live in New York City, where difference is welcomed
Yes.
and
I mean, right
accepted
here in
and
Queens,
and
Queens
common.
is the most diverse borough, the most diverse county in the country.
Right.
So.
Talking to other dwarfs who live in smaller towns, I think that it is more common there. But here I've never had any problem. That doesn't mean that of course, I'm sure that it exists.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay.
It may also depend. I've been very lucky. I've never had difficulty getting a job, keeping a job. I've been treated very well by my employers. My sister, however, a graphic artist, also a little person, and it was very difficult for her to get in there and get that first job. It took 12 months, and there was some blatant things that she experienced, and that wasn't very many years ago. Now, once she got the first job, there has been no problem since, but that first job, getting in there, was really difficult for her.
Where was your hometown? Where did you move from?
I'm actually from
Forget-
Ohio,
Right. I know.
Dayton, Ohio. Yeah, so
So is it small, Dayton, or no?
it's small compared to New York. It's it's
And
very
then
small.
there are some other stories, even at the highest levels. One of the most famous persons in the group is Paul Miller, who's Commissioner of Economic Opportunity in Washington, D.C., and he's a Harvard Law School graduate, and he went to the University of Pennsylvania, and when he was out looking for jobs, he sent out his resume. He got 30 interviews and no jobs because he was told people will not respect you. They won't want, quote, a circus dwarf. And they said that in those days to his face. Well, he went on to have to get a law school job and others, and to climb the ladder, and ultimately to be able to work for this kind of thing not to happen to people. So it does happen at many levels, but people have different experiences, and probably it's better today than it used to be.
Okay. So as we begin our second half hour on this topic, I'd like to remind our viewers that you're watching Talking About, and tonight's topic is dwarfism, and my guests are Betty Adelson, Anna Adelson, and Julie Williams. And we are taking your calls, and we do have a call right now. Joanne, when you are ready, just say hello. Whenever Joanne's ready, we would love to hear her question. Joanne?
Hello? Yeah, hello?
Hi, Joanne. I can barely hear you, Joanne.
Oh, can you hear me better now?
Yes, I can. What's your
Okay,
question, Joanne?
Hello? I was wondering if two so-called normal-sized people can have a dwarf baby. Did you hear me?
Yes. Two normal-sized people, the odds of having a dwarf child. We covered that in the first half hour, but could you reiterate it a little bit?
I came in, I just put the show on.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank
My
you.
mom and my dad are both average
I'll
size.
hang up and listen, okay?
Excuse
Should
me?
I hang up?
Okay. If you're having trouble hearing on the phone, just listen through the TV, and we'll
Okay,
answer that question
thank
for you. Okay.
My mom and my dad are both average size. I'm a dwarf. My brother is average size. It's more common, I think, it's more common or most common to have two average size parents if you're a dwarf. Both your parents are.
Yeah, both my
Right.
parents are average size. I have one sister who is tall and one who is also a little person. And that pans out based on the genetic recessive dominant combinations and all that.
Okay. So it's just when the two cells meet, and just depends how they greet each other.
Yeah.
And then also how many times they will manifest themselves.
So, okay. Getting back to the discrimination and portrayal, do you find media portrayal is fair? For example, in television programs or films, big character the last couple of years, Mini-Me.
Mhm.
Is that
I haven't seen any of the movies, so I really can't answer that question about Mini-Me specifically.
But in general, I mean, even something like Snow White.
I don't care. Personally, I don't care. I don't care how things are on the TV. Maybe we'll have different opinions, but I don't. Anything that's on the TV is. I feel like the entertainment is such a huge industry to fight or to care about, to deal with, to base your life on. And so if people, I don't know.
Not going to go out and carry a picket sign anytime soon.
Right, yeah. Because if someone has a problem with me, if someone thinks about me differently because they saw a dwarf doing something stupid on TV, well,
Then
the
they're a
problem
stupid
is
person.
the problem is no, they're not stupid, but the problem would be with their interpretation. And no, I mean, I don't care. I think that if you're trying to make your career as an actor, it's hard for a dwarf to get any meaningful roles. But that's a very small
That's one field.
population, and just as it is in the average size world,
Right.
there's a small population who are trying to make their careers as actors. But
Right.
it's just that they're on TV, so a lot of people see them.
Okay. Do you concur?
Actually, I don't have a problem. I think it's a hard business to get into, so if anyone's out there trying to make it in the field of acting, I'm never going to throw stones at what part they are playing. As a consumer and watching, I love it when I see some variety in roles that little people are able to get land and do. It's nice to see other characters portrayed besides just mythical or fairy tale characters. I like to see that, but certainly will never criticize or say, oh, there you go, stereotyping dwarves again.
But it would be nice to see the whole spectrum.
I like to see, and I enjoy it when I see others playing different roles, different professions.
As it is to see any minority being portrayed not as a stereotype in the media.
And there have been some improvements lately, so that Meredith Eaton, who is a dwarf with pseudochondroplasia, was on Family Law, and she had a nice role as a lawyer. And Danny Woodburn was on Seinfeld and also had a pretty decent role and has done other roles. So I think actors crave roles that are more
Meaty.
that anybody could play, often that would not just be limited, as she said, to mythological kinds of
And remind people that
characters.
they're real, that people of short stature with dwarfism, for whatever reason, are real people, living, breathing people. And that seems like a silly thing. Well, of course we know that they're real, but I have been places where people were frightened when I moved, thinking that I wasn't real, that I was this thing, this statue of something in the corner. So, I mean, that does happen. That seems silly. So to see real characters, not just mythical characters, is good. I like to see that.
I guess everybody likes to see a reflection of something they can identify with. So I guess that's what it all really breaks down to. So you want the identification. Let's get into family issues now a little bit. Take a parent of a newborn child who's been diagnosed. We touched on this a little bit. What should be done if the pediatrician doesn't know his stuff? How do they contact you? Do they contact you to find out where to go? Do they use web resources? What's the first step?
Well, it's gotten a lot better than it used to be. Most persons were isolated and had to deal alone. Some years ago, some of us got together in New York and canvassed all the hospitals and sent out literature, and then they would call a home that had a child who was a dwarf, and they would try to get referrals through us. Now they can often go to the web and the internet and find that Anna is the president of the New York Mets chapter, as you did.
Yes, that's how we got to this point, or at least that was step one in getting to this point.
And find out where to begin and how to get good medical resources. When Anna was born, there were two things I wanted: one, good medical resources, and two, to know another family who was raising a child, and three, to know adults who had good lives, because one begins by thinking, will he or she marry, or will they have a good job, and all kinds of questions that can't be answered then. But then to meet people and to see, yes, indeed, they have good lives, to hear there are lots of computer specialists and artists and lawyers and bakers and trolley car operators and everything under the sun, almost.
Starting with the medical, I mean, initially, in your experience, did you get accurate medical information right away?
No. I mean, we saw, most everybody has a story that they had poor, negative experiences from doctors who had seen one other and would not admit the limits of their
own knowledge.
Of their own knowledge. At that time, we were sending people to Johns Hopkins, which had one of the major centers. And a doctor here said, if you do that, I don't want to see you anymore, even though he'd seen no other dwarf, right? And was doing the wrong thing. So that kind of thing does happen, and but some doctors will at least call and find out and inform themselves if they don't know.
Right. Well, hopefully
But-
it would happen less so now, and doctors would try to educate themselves a little bit better.
Right.
But parents need, I think, need to see that as a precaution. Ask the pediatrician, ask the orthopedic surgeon, ask the neurosurgeon, the speech pathologist, the players that you're working with. Have you worked with dwarfism? If so, what forms of dwarfism have you worked with? And can you tell me some of your outcomes? What have you done? What have been your outcomes functionally, short-term and long-term? I mean, ask those questions. Doctors are trained to know, and that's their job, is to know.
Right.
So they may not always feel like they should say, hey, I don't know. You need to go to such and such. When I was a child, we had an orthopedic surgeon who, he was it, that's it. He knew nothing about my condition. We had another doctor the same time say, we really don't know your condition, but this place does. See what they have to say. So I had two different kinds of doctors in the same time, and we were lucky for that, that we had that.
Okay, and we have a caller right now. We have Karen on the line, I believe. Karen, whenever you're ready, just say hello, and we're more than happy to take your question.
Good evening. I'm
Karen?
enjoying the show. Hello. Can you hear me now?
I can't hear you, Karen.
Okay, am I talking a little better now?
Yes.
Okay. I just
What is your
was
question,
struck-
Karen?
I just wanted to make a statement and ask a question. I was very struck by the panel. The two little people, they have very distinct personalities, and I just wanted to let them know they come across very well on TV. They speak so beautifully and with such great dignity. And as they were talking about being represented in the television, I was wondering to myself, is there a theater, like there is a theater for the deaf, is there a theater of little people where they can have their unique expression and their own, the way they live their lives and what they have to say to us? And I can see just from listening to the last 10 minutes, they have a lot to say. Also, I'll just hang up now and listen to that answer.
Okay, thank you, Karen. So,
I don't know of any specific, well, thank you, Karen, for your compliment. I don't know of any specific acting troupe or acting theater. No. It's an interesting idea, and probably some of the actors, professional actors, have thought about it, or, you know, I don't know. It's an interesting idea.
and one worth exploring, or one that you might be a little wary of?
I don't know. I'm not an actor, so, you know, that would be a question for an actor.
Well, is it
If
something
they-
that you would like to see?
Me,
Hey, if you saw it, would you seek it out?
if it was there, yeah, of course I would. Yeah, I have friends who are actors and comedians, and I go see them, yeah. So it would be interesting. It would be interesting.
So, okay, where did we leave off before Karen? You're talking about
Well, medical
Yeah,
question
medical-
for parents.
yes.
That was, yes, what they should do, or advice for parents.
okay. So a parent has found the right doctor. Now what? I mean, you've given some of the questions that they should ask, but
Well,
what other resources beside the medical should a parent seek out?
Well, I think some friends who are experienced, and I think of my own sister when Anna was born, who said to me, really, what you need to think about now is now. Think about, you can't do anything about who she'll marry or what her job will be, but how about breastfeeding, toilet training, taking care of things, essentially looking at your child, loving your child as she is, in the here and now, getting help with any questions, dealing with nursery school and asking other people what they do, as you go along. And so, and filling your house with people so that Anna had an older brother. There were always people in the house. We had a climbing toy in the back. There was a lot of hubbub. And I think you want essentially a life like all other lives, of which the dwarfism is a part, but just a part. And then you deal with the specific concerns that come of that, but mostly have a good time living your life and dealing with any crises as they come along through medical people and other persons experienced friends with dwarfism. Essentially, being essentially a positive and of good cheer. It's not a tragic thing to have a child who's a dwarf, even though to begin with, people are afraid. It's a shock. It's a shock. But all of these stages of both getting help and of getting to know others.
Just stripping away the layers and getting to the love.
Absolutely.
Did you make that up?
It just came to me. Okay. Let's advance a few years, getting to be of school age. Children can be brutal. I don't know if it's brutally honest or brutally cruel, or a little bit of both. I mean, how can you help other children to become more aware or more accepting? Is that just exposure, or are there things that people can do to help educate their child's peers?
I don't. Did you do anything specific? I don't
Well,
remember.
I think you should talk about. I think you should
well,
talk
it's a
about how you
different-
dealt with what you
Okay.
experienced in the way of teasing, or what you experienced in the way of
Right.
any negativity, and how you dealt with it. Maybe that's the way to go.
So long ago.
Are there scars, or I mean?
There's no scars now, though. No.
No?
It's made me who I am, and I'm aware that there's a pain in the world, because people who tease are filled with pain, and I'm aware that there's difference, and that how beautiful that is, and it's only made me a better person in the end. But of course, it was horrible. It was terrible. It was hard being in school sometimes, and it was upsetting, and I did cry. But, it was all right in the end, looking back. But yes, it was a
bumpy road, but
but it was never like I didn't want to go to school because of it, because I had tons of good friends, and it was just a part of my life.
How often did it go on, and how much of the total was it? How much teasing was there overall?
Percentage-wise?
Yeah, I mean, was it once a day, once a year, once a month?
I have no idea.
Your experiences?
Actually, I had an interesting experience. I was going to school when laws changed, and there was changes in education where you had to you were no longer allowed to put children with disabilities in a school for children with disabilities. They were to be educated within
Mainstream, so to speak.
So I went through, quote, mainstream. So I had an experience of school for just children with disabilities, and then the switch to a, quote, public school, mainstream. That was the most terrifying experience of my life, because it was so, like, I'm leaving this building and I'm going to this building. It actually became probably the best thing that ever happened to me. And survival for me through that change and that transition was my family. My mother and father were very practical, very down-to-earth kind of people. They would always be like, okay, yep, that's tough, now go out there and try again, So I had that behind me to get through those rough spots. It actually got easier and easier, and then became, I had no more difficulties within the first year. So it was a good experience for myself. Not easy. And I do remember the change, and it was a big change. It was very big.
Do you think it's a good idea? Which experience do you think is more appropriate, or a combination for a child?
You know, if you're gonna live out here in this world,
You gotta
could
be in the
go-
world.
Be in the world. I wouldn't want a child to go through that year that I went through. That was such a big change. So I don't know that it happens anymore. I would much rather a child grow into it, not be imploded with it in one day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So that's my opinion on that.
Because I think our physical needs don't have anything to do with learning which school is.
Right.
So they have no place in putting people in different places because, school is to educate, and so sometimes you have to put people with different mental capacities in different classes so that they can learn better. People with dwarfism have the same mental capacity as anybody else, and so therefore they should be put with the same
Is that
thing.
a common misconception?
I don't know.
Is what?
Mental
That we have
capacity.
different mental capacities.
Oh yeah, I think.
would think so.
I think there is a perception at times. In fact, I had a colleague, say to me once, a year after working together, we were in very professional, roles. I didn't think you'd be as smart as you were. You really are smart. The first time you said something, I was like, wow, And I was well out of elementary, junior high, and high school. This was,
Right.
into my quote adulthood. So I do think there's some misconceptions about that.
So, okay. What about self-esteem issues? Jumping back to children, what can be done to help the child maintain positive self-esteem? Is it the mainstreaming, or is it a factor of everything?
I think it's a lot of everything. I mean, no one ever has. Hopefully, people have enough stuff in the environment around them, and their
Right.
school systems, and their medical services, and their families. They get enough of everything, and then their own internal resources come together and to make a nice, strong person. But people don't always have that. So hopefully, by giving information out, by sharing that helps strengthen the internal resources or the ability to go get the information so that the rest can be tightened up, the external support can be put in place. Because it can be very tight, it can be lonely, it can be a hard experience if you don't have that.
Okay. And getting to support in the last few minutes, Little People of America. Can you give me an overview of the organization?
It's a national organization that has, I think, over 8,000 members, both people of short stature and their families. And it's both it's a place you can go for medical outreach, medical resources, and also social.
Social, for example.
There's different there's different gatherings during the year at different levels, national levels, regional levels, to go and be with people of short stature, other dwarfs, and hang out and not necessarily talk about anything to do with dwarfism, but just hang out and be yourself and know others that are like you, and it makes it's a great it's a good thing. It's a good thing. And
Knowing
my
others.
life was improved incredibly when I joined it and when I got more involved. Only about for 4 or 5 years now have I been back in LPA, and it's been the best thing ever. If you're thinking about it, do it.
Okay.
If you're
Your opinion on that?
I'm a believer. You can get it from wherever you can. So there's a value in the organization. There's support there. There's information you can get. There may be times in your life where you need more of it or less of it, depending on what you're dealing with in your life at that time. I would say don't shut the door on anything, and LPA is certainly one avenue that someone can get a lot of potentially helpful things from. So of course, try it.
Okay. And how can people reach out to LPA?
the website,
Okay, which is?
www.lpaonline.org.
Okay, is there a?
And then there's a 1-800 number, 1-888-LPA 2001, I believe is that right? Will we have it, or
Offhand,
will
well, at the very least, the website will be up, or you can write to me. My P.O. box is up at the end of the show. It's box 20713, Floral Park, New York 11002. You can write to me for more information about any topic that we cover on the show. We're winding down. We just got a couple of minutes left. Any final thoughts across the board? Let's start at the beginning. Final thoughts for somebody who's looking to reach out. Final thoughts about any final thought that you want to get out.
I think talking about LPA or outside, I think most will say they live in two worlds. They're the worlds of knowing some people like themselves and enjoying that, and also managing in the greater world. And as far as everybody meets foolish people who tease,
Okay.
and the one generally
Okay.
finds ways to deal. And for those who go through it, often it's, as I think as both these young women have
Okay.
indicated, it can be strengthening
Okay.
and life-giving to overcome and
And just about out of time.
manage
So,
it.
so anyway, I thank you. I got a lot out of this past hour, this show, and again, I thank you all for being here. And again, you can check out their website, or you can write to me, box 20713, Floral Park, New York 11002, www.talkingabout.info, and we are just about out of time. And I thank you again for watching. Good night.